Alright guys, it's Chatterbox Reviews. Coming to you guys my review for the pilot of Bad Monkey on Apple TV+. Alright, so when I put together my most anticipated TV shows video earlier this year, this was one of the series as part of the new shows, right, in that video, and I had to do some digging to even find it. I think I found it through like Vince Vaughn's IMDb page and stuff like that, and I think it maybe had the title of Bad Monkey at that time, and I remember maybe like hearing the news or something about the show being in development over a year ago now, and that Vince Vaughn was attached and all that. So anyways, we got a lot more details just a couple months ago about this, and that, you know, the production was wrapped on it and that it sounded like it was coming out, and then of course we got the trailer and all the typical stuff that comes with that. So it has now premiered just last night. The pilot and episode 2 came out, but I thought just for the purpose of this review, I'm just going to talk about the pilot, and part of the reason why is that I'm going to do very little spoilers, so if you haven't seen it yet, obviously, you know, you can watch this review rather than doing a review for both episodes and then probably having to go a little bit into spoilers and talk more about that. Now, I also plan, you know, as the series progresses here and as I keep watching, if I do keep watching all the way through, which I intend to do, that I will do a review where I talk spoilers for either some of the episodes or just, you know, season as a whole, right? When we get to the end of it, what did I think of the whole season? So stay tuned if you are, you know, you really enjoyed this pilot and the second episode too, the first 2 episodes, and you want to see that, you know, definitely stay tuned on the channel for that when that comes. But otherwise, love to hear your guys' thoughts on this pilot episode if you have seen it. And like I just mentioned, you don't have to have seen it to watch this review either. So what are your thoughts on, you know, if you're going to check it out? What are you excited about? Obviously, I know Vince Vaughn, as it was for me, is probably the big catch here for a lot of viewers. So love to hear your guys' thoughts on Vince Vaughn. If you like him, you're a big fan, you want to check out the show, all that stuff. So love to hear from you guys, whatever you want to share in the comments below. And if you enjoy this review, please leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel as well. We really appreciate it. Just recently hit 1,000 subscribers here on the channel, so really appreciative of that. And yeah, it'd be cool to see some more growth here coming in the future. So anyways, like I said, very light spoilers for this review. You know, if you're one of those people that you don't want to know anything about the show, which actually is kind of me. I rarely watch trailers nowadays for TV shows or movies for that matter too. But if you are that person, then yeah, maybe I'm going to talk about some jokes and some stuff in the pilot episode, but for the most part, nothing much here that's going to ruin it for you. So I want to start off with just talking about some of the general details, the synopsis of the pilot episode here. So it is directed by Marcos Siega, which I wasn't familiar with the name, but then when I looked into him, he directed the pilot of The Vampire Diaries, which I'm not sure if I've seen the whole show, but I've seen way too much of the show to admit to publicly, but no, it's, you know, for what it was, I did get some enjoyment out of it for the time that I did watch some of it, and so anyway, but he directed the pilot and many episodes of The Vampire Diaries, so that was interesting. And then also more recently, The Flight Attendant he's directed on, but I think he also did some Dexter episodes, so he's been around for sure, and I think it's an interesting choice here where, you know, he comes from The Flight Attendant. I guess makes a little more sense. It's a little more kind of in the same tone, right, as this show, where you get that comedy and a bit of that drama. So yeah, fitting there, and you can see kind of why. Now, as I will talk about, I'm not, like, the direction here didn't really stand out to me that much. In fact, I would go maybe more negative than positive in the directing, but just kind of interesting to see where he came from there. And then, of course, the other big name, probably next to Vince Vaughn, involved in the project here is Bill Lawrence. So the show's developed, and this pilot is written by him. And of course, he's from, he had created the show Scrubs, which I was not aware of previous to the show, but more recently, his big shows that he's known for is Ted Lasso and Shrinking. And both those shows very successful for Apple, or at least probably Ted Lasso obviously more so. I think Shrinking's only had that one season. I believe season 2 is coming. I have not seen it. And Ted Lasso, it's maybe one of my hottest takes, but I'm not a big fan of Ted Lasso, or at least the first few episodes I saw of season 1. So that was kind of my thing going into this show is, I'm not really a big fan of Ted Lasso, so I wonder if this will land for me. And I will say, for anyone that's in that same boat, or maybe you just didn't really get Ted Lasso on the same level as a lot of other people, this is nothing like it. Like, the humor and everything is very different in this show. So yeah, don't worry about that for sure. That was something that, just within the first few minutes, I was like, oh, okay, this is not really going to be like Ted Lasso. And of course, it's based off a book too, so you have that kind of, thing about it too, that it's not going to be, Bill Lawrence is adapting something here, and it's not necessarily going to be, in that same vein as Ted Lasso, right? Okay, so in terms of the synopsis here, it is set in South Florida, and we also get about half of this pilot episode is set in the Bahamas as well. So it's kind of the Keys, right? Or Keys, Miami, and then the Bahamas. Those are kind of the three settings here, but mainly it's going to be set here in South Florida in that area. Vince Vaughn plays Andrew Yancey, a recently suspended detective who is put in charge of closing the case on a severed arm discovered by local fishermen. So the very start of this pilot episode is that the severed arm is discovered by these fishermen, and then, we're introduced to Andrew Yancey, and then we kind of, learn that he's a recently suspended detective, and, as the pilot goes on, more stuff happens to him where, he ends up losing his job, and he becomes a little bit more than suspended, and that's very early on. And, then, of course, in this pilot episode, he is put in charge then of almost burying this case, right? Like, kind of burying the fact that they found this severed arm, and they're just kind of trying to keep it under wraps here. And so that's kind of what he's tasked with in this pilot episode. Okay, so now for my thoughts of this pilot episode. What did I think of it? Again, with very little spoilers or anything. But Vince Vaughn is in peak form here. A big reason I watched the show is, of course, for Vince Vaughn. And I mean, arguably, you could say the only reason I watched the show is for Vince Vaughn. Huge fan of Vince Vaughn. I mean, Vince Vaughn comedies, like Old School, Wedding Crashers, those are some of my favorite comedies of all time. It's just my age as well, probably, fits that time as well. But yeah, love Vince Vaughn. I also think he's great in Dragged Across Concrete, the S. Craig Zahler film, and also Brawl in Cell Block 99, I think, to me, is his career best performance. He's absolutely amazing in that film. And so he's done some more dramatic things that I love, but obviously the comedy is the main, reason a lot of people like him and watch him, and that is on full display here. Yeah, I really think he's in peak form. He's even better than I thought he would be, because I wasn't sure, Vince Vaughn being in this show, and of course, I mean, goes without saying, he hasn't been in a lot, right? Like, both those S. Craig Zahler films are smaller, kind of indie movies, and those are some of the biggest things that he's been in the last, 7 years, which is really unfortunate, but that's kind of the reality. So I wasn't sure exactly what this was going to be, but he's amazing in this, and it really feels like this character for him was either written for him, like Bill Lawrence adapted this book and wrote this script knowing that Vince Vaughn was playing this character, or I think Vince Vaughn is kind of adding his own flair here with some improv and riffing throughout this episode, because this is just way too Vince Vaughn of a character. Like, it literally feels like it's made for him, nobody else. If all this dialogue is scripted, which I have my doubts, but if it is, I don't think there's anyone else that could play that character and be that quick and that, I saw something call his kind of type of performance a motor mouth, and it's true. It's just constant speaking and going back and forth with other characters. It's just brilliant, and that's what he's so good at. So really have to give him credit. And to me, I really think he carries this pilot episode, at least for the first half. I think the second half, especially when we get introduced to the character in the Bahamas, is it Neville, I believe? Then the rest of the episode, I think, is, it becomes a little more intriguing. But that first half, I think Vince Vaughn really carries and really helps the show get off the ground there, because he's so damn good with what he's doing. So again, and I'll talk about this at the end, but if you're not a Vince Vaughn fan and you don't love this type of performance and this type of character, I'm not sure that you'll like this show, because they really dive into it. And like I said, it really feels like it's written for him. So yeah, unfortunately, if you're not a fan, maybe this isn't for you, but if you are, like myself, you're going to love that for sure. So that's kind of my thought on it. Of course, he's the big draw, so I had to, start off by talking about that for sure. And the rest of the cast is good so far. There's some other names here that really intrigue me as well. Natalie Martinez, who's been in countless shows, honestly, for me at this point, mainly network shows in the past. She was in that one Netflix one, The Island, like literally the letter I and then land, no S for some reason, but I believe that's what the title was. But anyways, she's been in a lot of shows, and so she plays, I'm assuming, or at least what seems to be his kind of love interest, maybe, or she, at least in this episode, works in the morgue in Miami. So she's that character, and I thought she was good in the scenes that she had. I think she's always been a good actress in the shows that she's in, and obviously network TV, it's not that the highest bar, but I think she's been good in what she what roles she has been in, and she's also great in that film with Jake Gyllenhaal and Michael Pena, End of Watch. I think that's her best performance, actually. She's really great in that. And then Michelle Monaghan from True Detective Season 1. So really, she plays Woody Harrelson's wife, I believe. I forget her name now, but I believe it's his wife in that. And she's great in True Detective Season 1. So that's the other thing that I've seen her in. I'm sure she's been in some other stuff, but she really stood out this episode too, playing Vince Vaughn, Andrews. They had a great line in the episode where they said his like former future ex-girlfriend or something, ex-wife or something like that. So obviously it's that toxic relationship they're playing on, and she does such a good job as playing his ex-wife in that dynamic. So really great stuff from the cast so far. I thought really good. So far with them, and obviously Vince Vaughn carrying it there. So I think it captures the settings of South Florida and the Bahamas very well with the costumes, the set design, some of the shot choices as well, by kind of showing us with those wide shots, and especially some of those driving sequences where Vince Vaughn's character Andrew's driving in the car. A lot of big wide shots where we're seeing the environment, we're seeing the setting, and I think that was really a priority in this pilot episode, and probably for the whole show, is to really establish the environment, the setting that they're in, because I think that plays a big part, and all the marketing and the synopsis, everything, right? It has really focused a lot on that, and so I think they do a hell of a job in this pilot episode with that. Obviously, it's with Apple. I believe it's Warner Bros. Television, actually, which is the production company here. So yeah, the budget's there, it looks like, at least, and they have the money to pull off some good stuff, and it definitely looks good in this pilot episode. So got to give them credit there. And the Bahamas stuff, I think, is really cool. I'm not sure that we see a lot of that stuff on TV, at least, the main stream TV, if you will, and to have some stuff like that on here, I think it's really cool, and I can't wait to explore more of that environment, more of that setting. And the Dragon Queen stuff was really cool. I really liked the way that, obviously the inside of her house looked like the interior there, and even her. I believe, is it Jodie Turner-Smith, the actress that is playing the Dragon Queen? I could be wrong, but I believe that's her name. And she did really great, and just her costume, like everything about that is just is cool. It's intriguing. So really great job with that for sure. Now, the main issue, or the main criticism I have with this pilot, is that it's just kind of a shaky balance in the tone so far. And this was the biggest thing when I was looking into this, and I mentioned this in my most anticipated video when I talked about this show, and I was like, at that time, it was literally just billed as a drama series. And I'm thinking, well, why would you have Vince Vaughn? You have Alex Moffat as well from SNL, I believe, in this. You have some other comedic actors. And Bill Lawrence is the writer and creator who's from Shrinking and Ted Lasso, which are filled with comedic elements. So to me, it never made sense why it was just being called a drama. Obviously, watching this pilot episode, I personally would describe this as a comedy first, drama second, right? So yeah, you could say it's a dramedy, but I think comedy, drama. I think that's the order of things here. And so this was the one thing I was worried about is, okay, well, it's being called a drama, but there's obviously going to be comedic elements with all the people involved, especially having Vince Vaughn as the star. Obviously he can do dramatic stuff, and he has True Detective Season 2, for example, and other films I named. But anyways, there's going to be some comedic elements. And so they have to balance the tone here between the comedy and the drama. Then you also have the crime elements and the kind of mystery here that they're building. And I'm just not sure that they did a good job of it in this pilot episode. Now, this is a big kind of criticism I have for Succession, now one of my favorite shows of all time, and I think was pitch perfect in balancing the comedy and the drama. But even that show, to me, in the pilot episode, it was a little shaky to me. I don't think they really fully captured that tone. So for me saying this about the pilot is, look at where Succession went, right? So there's no reason why the rest of the season can't capture the right tone. But this pilot episode I thought was a little shaky. So I just think they're not willing to go all out dark comedy, but there's too many comedic moments for the few dramatic ones to actually land in this pilot episode. There are, a few dramatic moments between Michelle Monaghan's character and Vince Vaughn's Andrew, right? Him and his ex-wife there, and a few others throughout the episode. And to me, it just doesn't land to me. It just isn't, quite as serious or quite as dramatic as what they want it to be, because a lot of the rest of the episode is just this dark comedy and kind of going for these laughs. And I'll get to that, but I think it's very effective in that. But yeah, it's just a little bit too comedic at other points in this episode. And as well, like with the mystery and the crime elements here, it's almost like it's kind of, it's too, hokey, if you will, right? Like some of these things are just like too exaggerated for the sake of making a joke or, making a comedic bit, right, in the episode. And it kind of takes away from the seriousness of that crime. But at the same time, they want it to be a little serious. They're not willing to just make this a full-out dark comedy and make, everything just this heightened, exaggerated thing. Maybe I'm not making sense, but yeah, that's just how I feel, is that, they're not willing to commit fully to the dark comedy. They want some of this crime, mystery elements in it, but there's too much comedy here, at least in this pilot episode, for that to really land. And perhaps that is Vince Vaughn's performance. Like, perhaps that is just because he's, he doesn't really take anything seriously at any point in this episode. And that's just kind of his character. And obviously, that's the type of performance that he's going to give you. But yeah, maybe tone it down for a couple scenes. Or maybe, some of these elements can be a little more serious and we can really stay in those scenes. I noticed that too. A lot of these scenes, especially the more dramatic ones, were very quick, right? Were very quick and kind of went on to the next thing, and it was more of a dark comedy again and this kind of thing. So maybe, sit in those scenes for a little bit and generate some of that kind of, dramatic moments of it, and we can see that, right? And so, I don't want to go too much into spoilers, but towards the very end of the episode, when, probably the biggest action thing happens, again, it felt like they wanted it to be like this kind of noir, like kind of, the way it was raining and at night and all this stuff, the way it was shot, that it was supposed to be kind of this serious, mysterious crime thing, but it almost was like comedic, just because the whole rest of the episode plays it that way. So anyways, yeah, I just think the tone is a little shaky here. And the one other thing I want to mention about this is the narration. I thought this was an odd choice, and to me, again, it takes away from those crime elements, especially, like I said, at the end of the episode there, with the narrator constantly telling us, and almost like meta, right, when he's telling, that, they want to take a break from our main story and go over here. And it's just, to me, it was like a little too much, because it's really kind of almost making fun of itself, right? Again, it's like this meta narration at times throughout the episode. And then at other times you want us to be intrigued in this mystery and build this kind of story, and it just doesn't all balance to me. Anyways, that's my main criticism with this pilot, is the tone. But again, I think it definitely can improve, and as we have more episodes and as the mystery unfolds, perhaps they might take a more serious turn with this, and that's what we might see. But again, I think, to me personally, I think the show would have been better for just going all out dark comedy. Yeah, you have the mystery elements, but it is kind of secondary to the laughs. Whereas I don't think that they're fully committing to that in this pilot episode quite yet. So, having said all that, I think there's some great comedic bits and payoffs and just laugh out loud moments in this pilot episode. Couple of the ones I thought were the red lights for the baby turtles, right? We came back like 2 or 3 times to that, and I thought that was just a really kind of funny bit. And again, we get that payoff towards the end of the episode when one of the characters like, what are all these red lights for? And then we kind of, we get Vince Vaughn saying the baby turtles line again. So that was great. And then the dead raccoon, right? We see the scene where the raccoon gets run over, and then later on in the episode, we see that, Vince Vaughn puts it in the mansion next to him to kind of get back at him. So just little things like that I thought are really effective in this episode. And like I said, multiple laugh out loud moments, at least for me, again, mainly coming from Vince Vaughn and his performance. But yeah, so some really effective, comedic stuff in this episode. And again, that's where maybe I think they really just should have committed fully to the comedy, because I think it really works well. Again, mainly due to Vince Vaughn, but it really works well in this pilot. So that may have been the best approach. But anyways, still some great moments and some really funny ones. And as the series goes on, I'm sure may have some of the best comedic, bits and moments of the year for me in TV, because this pilot episode has been really great so far. So yeah, have to call those out. And then there's some other ones too I thought that were really great, but for now we'll leave it at that. Again, don't want to spoil too much. And so yeah, so some really great moments in this one. So and then I want to end off with just saying the mystery is intriguing here, right? It's an intriguing mystery, but I do have kind of my concerns or fears that it may become a little too convoluted by the time we reach the finale in episode 10. And this has been a problem with many, many shows. I would say more recently, well, for quite a while, I guess, too, but more recently I've noticed it at least, is that you get, and the show Beef comes to mind, the limited series on Netflix, which I really liked. I thought it was really great. That pilot episode is like one of the best pilots I've seen in, probably of the last few years. Like, it was a really great pilot. But even in that pilot, as good as it was, I had the same kind of fear, because I'm just used to it by now with these 10-episode series where they have a great concept or premise, and then it just kind of gets stretched out. Like, you just have 2 or 3 too many episodes in some of these series and seasons. And I feel that that's exactly what's going to happen here. 10 episodes. When I first saw 10 episodes, I'm like, ooh, okay. But yeah, I feel like 10 episodes is just going to be too many for this mystery that they're setting up here. I could be wrong, because it does seem like a very big web of lies and all these different kind of facets going into this mystery. Although, having said that, it does seem like kind of clear cut in a couple little things they lay out here in this pilot episode, but maybe they'll, throw some twists in there and confuse us. But yeah, I just think it's going to be a little too convoluted by the time we get to the finale in episode 10. That would be my fear just from this pilot episode, forecasting ahead. Something like, I believe, Sugar on Apple That was something where it kind of got a little, and that's a very similar thing, actually. They set up the mystery in episode 1, kind of the same thing playing here, obviously way less comedic with Colin Farrell earlier this year, and it just got a little too convoluted by the time we got to that finale, and like I said, Beef, I think, was a good example. It's just a fear of mine. Again, maybe that's not a criticism necessarily of this pilot episode, but just something that I'm kind of want to lay the groundwork for now as we go forward here in the season. I'm still not sure if this is a limited series or they may leave the door open for a season 2. I would think it would probably be limited because I'm not sure that Vince Vaughn would want to do multiple seasons of a TV show at this point of his career, but maybe. I don't know. And I'm not sure how much of the book they're adapting either. So that's another concern. But anyways, if they are doing a season 2 or something like that, then yeah, maybe this criticism kind of changes. Maybe it doesn't apply because maybe they might set up other stuff, as we get to the end of the season. But if it is just a mini series or just 10 episode this one contained season, I think they're going to, that's a lot of episodes and a lot of time to unravel a mystery like this that I don't see having, that much time to really unravel. Anyways, so my final thoughts then on this pilot episode, after saying all of that, is if you like Vince Vaughn, you need to check this out. I think that goes without saying after everything I've said here, but I'll say it again. If you're a fan of his and you like his type of performance and his type of characters that he plays in a lot of those great comedies from the 2000s and 2010s, you'll love this. I mean, especially the first half of this pilot episode, you will love it. I think it's really great. In that way, I loved it, and I'm a fan. Now, if you're not a huge fan of Vince Vaughn, especially if you're not a huge fan, but if you're just not that familiar with him, and I feel like this performance could really turn you off, especially, again, like the first half of the episode could really turn you off, and if you're not a fan of him at all, then yeah, I think you might kind of struggle with this, because it's very centered on his type of performance and his character here, but there's still some elements to enjoy, even if you aren't a fan of his. There's stuff here, and I think the mystery is intriguing enough to kind of keep you, tuned in and probably want to watch episode 2, which dropped at the same time as this one. So I could definitely see, there being enough there for you to still enjoy this pilot and still enjoy the show, even if you're not a fan of him. But just nothing's really special yet in this pilot episode. Again, I still think after watching this episode, the main reason I'm going to continue watching the show is for Vince Vaughn, right? There's nothing in this pilot episode that really caught me and was like, oh, I need to watch this show. Like, yeah, Vince Vaughn's great, but this is really great. I really want to keep watching this show. There was nothing like that to me. It's more so just kind of, yeah, my expectations were met. Vince Vaughn's awesome. I really like watching him in this. And yeah, there's some other stuff that's kind of interesting. So that's kind of what I came out of this pilot thinking. Nothing, insane, nothing really, really special yet. But, of course, we have 9 episodes to go, so we'll have to see. So, anyways, love to hear your guys' thoughts on this pilot. If you have seen it, like I said off the top, or if you haven't, any comments and all that stuff is welcome for sure. So yeah, again, looking forward to the rest of this season here, and if I do watch, all the way to the end, I do plan on doing reviews for either episodes or just the whole season as a whole. So definitely stay tuned if you're interested in that. But anyways, that'll just about do it. So thank you guys so much for watching this one, and we'll see you then in my next review.